Hello folks, today I'm going to do some color mixing. I've had a number of people ask me to do a lesson in this, so here we go. I've got a big piece of, I don't know what this is, piece of prime foam core or something I'm going to use as my palette. And for color mixing, I mix on the palette sometimes, but I also mix the paint directly on the canvas quite frequently. Now everyone who is an expert is going to tell you to mix your paint with this palette knife, which I don't necessarily do. I almost do all my mixing with a brush. It's a shortcut for me because by the time you reach for the knife, mix the paint, then go looking for your brush and come back and forth, I find it's just one unnecessary step. So I'll use this for a pointer. How's that sound? I do not always set a palette up with all these colors, but this is pretty much all the colors I may use at some point. A lot of what I do, being landscapes and architectural, I don't use some of these colors, so like the reds and maybe that Viridian and some of these blues, but I wanted to show you the complete array. Starting over here, and this is pretty much how I set it up. Some of them might be out of sequence a little bit, but this is pretty much how a palette should be set. And the reason that we set a palette in the same way every time is we can instinctively know that our yellows are over here, our darks are over here, and so forth, so you don't go searching quite as much. So starting on the left here, I have titanium white. I think this is cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow medium, yellow ochre, that's cadmium orange. That is a strange color called transparent orange, and I think it might only be made by Gamblin. This looks like burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, viridian, sap green, cerulean blue. I believe that's cobalt blue. This looks like phthalo blue, sometimes known as Prussian blue. This is ultramarine blue. And this is some kind of purple that starts with a D that I cannot pronounce. And burnt umber. So I would say of these, the yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber are somewhat of the earthy colors. They're more natural colors. The rest are synthetic or made from, who knows what they're making it from. Now, ultramarine blue used to be made from crushing lapis lazuli into a powder, mixing it with oil and all these other things. I think viridian and alizarin crimson and phthalo blue are somewhat chemical. They're almost like dyes. So I very rarely use those three colors. All right, so putting that useless knife down, I'll start with a brush. I'm going to use just a little bit of paint thinner to spread things out. Where should I start? I guess I'll start with blues. You know, this is cerulean blue, and I use this quite a lot mixed with white. It makes a nice sky color. Sometimes I may put a little bit of orange in it to give it that green. You see, that's a nice wintry sky. I mean, no sky looks like that, at least not in my neighborhood. Other blues, let's just stick with the blues. I think this is cobalt blue. It's just another rich blue. If you're painting, you know, things that have that nice dark cobalt blue color, that's what you want to use. Another color very close to that, which I use quite frequently, is ultramarine blue. It is a very dark, almost violet colored blue. Main thing I use that for, well, I use it for lots of things, but I overglaze skies. Sometimes I might take, you know, the cerulean blue, mix it with white, and then I'll overglaze it with ultramarine after it's dry to make a nice darker, let's say a little darker painting at the top, for example, and then you add a little white as you're coming down. You make a nice gradual sky like that. One of the best uses that I have found for this ultramarine blue is to take ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and it makes a nice black. You'll see that I do not have black on the palette, although I have been known to use it. But what I also say, and of course you can make nice grays with this, But I also say, try to get across to people is, take the blue, take the burnt umber, mix it a little bit, but don't overmix it, because what I like to say is you can paint with it, and you're going to get a little blue, a little brown, maybe a little white gray. You get a variety of color, and this adds depth to your color. Get on the blue side, this adds depth to your color, and it keeps you from just being a big flat area of black. See how that works? And as I keep saying, that also makes nice grays. You can see this is slightly blue. This one is slightly brown. We'll thin that down a little bit so you can see better. That one's slightly brown. And even adding maybe a little yellow, you're going to end up making a green. Because everybody knows that if you mix yellow with black, you get green, correct? And of course, you can add blue to that, make a nice blue, green, etc. All right, so let's clean off this brush a little bit. Let's see. If you're painting flowers, like sunflowers, for example, you end up using all different kinds of yellows and oranges. Make it a little smaller, make it a little bigger. Come on. And you can blend these together, to make the petals and so forth. You might even take a little burnt sienna, a little too much burnt sienna, to make that a nice shadow color. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you might add a little white up here to, well, I should do that without the burnt sienna in the brush, shouldn't I? All right, so clean it up a little bit. Little white, little yellow on this end. So you get the idea. You can get a nice gradual tone. Let's see, orange, it's good for sunsets. Obviously, all these are good for sunset colors, except maybe the yellow ochre. This is just a nice earth color. A nice earthy yellow. It's not bright and bold. So it's like that. Of course, it makes a nice light yellow that's like a tan. Okay, clean up our brush. What else are we going to do here? We're going to go into the greens a little bit. And I'm going to start with this sap green. Sap green is just a nice grassy green. Works very well for lots of greenery, obviously, and you can mix yellow in it and of course white to get that nice light green color. And obviously you can tuck blue in it to get a darker green color. So yellow, here we are, yellow and blue make green. So either yellow on one side or blue on the other makes it light and or dark. All right, so then I'm going to go over to the Viridian. Viridian is a color I use very rarely. All right, so where was I? Viridian. All right, so Viridian is a color that if you watch any of my other videos, you've seen me complain about all the time. It's a dye-based blue-green that every manufacturer puts in their kits, and it's a useless green, except for one thing. Unfortunately, everybody paints their evergreen trees with this, and it just looks terrible. I would never, and I mean it, even though when I say never, you have to say almost never, and when I say always, you have to kind of go, well, almost always. I'd never use this out of the tube like that. I use it to make evergreens, I use it with burnt sienna mixed in. Because you see what that does? That creates more or less the perfect evergreen color. It's got lots of brown, lots of dark green in it. And then, of course, you can add a little white if you need that, a lighter version of the evergreen. All right, where does that leave us? We've got red. Obviously, you can use pure red, and I think I've got some green with this. You can make it, look at that, it's a nice green, purple, red color. Kind of a nice color for shadows. But I gotta clean out this brush a little bit. I'm getting a little bit too much going on. Again, because of the nature of my subject matter, I almost never use red. It is good for sunsets and skies and so forth. If you want to mix, you get a nice pink out of it. But a better pink again, if you need such a thing, can be used by, or made by using this alizarin crimson, which is a really interesting, again, the color acts like a dye, so you have to be really careful with it, but it makes a really nice pink. And of course, I think you can, would you grab a little cobalt here, mix it and get a nice purple out of it too. A little lavender or something, should the need arise. There you go. So a nice light purple. And of course, for our regular purple, we have this purple that starts with a D, whose name I cannot say, because it's just more letters than I care to get my brain around. Starts with a D, you can find it at the store. All right, good for shadow colors. Let's see, what haven't we done? Transparent orange. Once again, I think this is, I've only seen it made by Gamblin. And how it's best used is if you're working on some shrubbery here. Let's do some shrubbery. See how bright green that is? And we'll tuck a little, we'll get our burnt umber going here. We'll tuck a couple of limbs in there or branches. What's nice about this transparent orange is, again, just like I used, what did I use? Just like I used the burnt sienna to cut the acidity of the Viridian, I use the transparent orange in greenery sometimes, and it gives it yet another earthy, a little bit more of a natural green, you know, because if you have this way in the background, you see, you don't even have to see this distinguishing light and dark and trunks and all. Like if it's in the background, you put that little orange in it, and it suggests that there's lots of tracery or twigs or whatever it is you want to call it in the background. And then of course you probably want to come back over here maybe with a little yellow and do a little highlight on the top if that's a bush, for example. But once again, the orange goes in, blended in, and it gives a nice bit of life to the green. There you go, a little bit of, deadens it, makes it more natural looking. So let's see, obviously, and I think that's about it. For some fundamentals, I used burnt umber for almost all my underpainting. And you can thin this out and of course make lighter and lighter areas with it. And that's a nice natural color. And then when you paint things and then you let it dry, and then you may mix a glaze, which is of course, as I've said before, some color, some medium. And for that I use, as I've said, Galkyd Light for my medium. And it gives, when you put the glaze over it, the brown shows through because the glaze is thin, and it gives a lot of life to whatever it is you're painting. And of course, probably the first thing I should have done is a couple of fundamental thoughts. That being, obviously clean the brush again. That being that the primary colors are of course yellow and red and blue. Let's just say, oh, what did I not use here? Okay, well, we'll get back to that. So you take some red, obviously, that was yellow. I forget what I'm talking about. You take some yellow, you take some red, you mix them together, and you get orange. We all know this, I know, but sometimes we gotta be reminded. All right, so then of course we take some cobalt blue and some yellow once again, and we get a nice green. And then of course, red, blue, hope that's blue, make purple. And obviously they're really dark, so you need to add some light to those colors to get your purple. All right, and that was cadmium red and ultramarine blue, I think, or cobalt blue I used in that case. Okay, so any of these colors, those are the primaries, the yellow, the red, and the blue. These are the middle colors that they make. Any of those colors, such as putting opposites together, like the red and the green will make gray, or gray-brown in this case, a little bit more green. Obviously, you're going to need white to get that color out of it, make a nice, this particular one is a reddish, and then by adding more green, you can get a greener, and then white, of course, you know, various grayed down colors. I always tell people to get the point across is that if you're painting a banana, believe it or not, that's a banana. I like to put a little purple in the shadows. And that's an extreme example because I've lost my paint, but putting the opposite color of the main color or the primary color in the shadows is what works. In other words, an apple, we got a space here. You got an apple, you want to put a little green under here. You see how nicely that works? It's the opposite of red. It deadens the red. It makes the shadow color. All right, where was I? I got to yellow and your purple make a gray, the red and green make a gray, and the orange and blue will make a gray. So the opposite colors on the, you know, the opposites will make grays, and either, if this is too strong of a blue, little bit of orange will gray it out nicely. And of course, in this case, it turns it to green because the orange has a lot of yellow in it. A color that I skipped before, I think, is this. I think that's phthalo. It's again a kind of a dye-based color, but the only use that I've ever found for that is if you're painting night scenes. This is the perfect color to overglaze a painting. You've probably seen one of my other videos where I painted an entire landscape with the burnt umber, let it dry, then overglaze it with a very thin wash of this, or a thin glaze of this phthalo blue or Prussian blue, whichever. They're interchangeable, they're the same. And then wiped it back, and it gives a nice moonscape kind of color. So, I don't know. Any of these colors can be mixed with white to lighten, and if you need to darken, it just depends on the color. You can darken the red with the green, you can darken the blue with the purple. And any of them can be darkened by adding the ultramarine blue and burnt umber, make that little dark color here, and add it to any color. For example, that orange, you know, it'll darken any color. All right, I don't know what else I can really add to that. You've just got to experiment and test what colors work well for you. There are so many colors that different manufacturers make. I try to stick with the ones that are traditional, like the cadmium reds and burnt umbers and burnt siennas. A lot of manufacturers come up with their own names, and I would just be wary of them because it can get very confusing. You end up with more colors than you need. I do end up using 3 or 4 yellows, couple of greens, couple of oranges, 3 or 4 blues, again, depending on what I'm doing. So that's it. So happy painting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.